Question. Can you please make a video explaining an interaction with an ascended master? That's a tricky question. And the reason why it's tricky is that I have, over the many years I've been on the spiritual path, and over the many years since I first heard of ascended masters, I've seen people go into all kinds of reactions, and I've seen myself go into the same reaction when I was new to the path. We always dream of this out of this world, fantastic, decisive experience with an ascended master that proves how special we are. I've seen people go into it so many times. I can see it in myself when I look back. And, you know, it really, in order to really understand it, you have to understand the central dilemma of the ascended masters. Because they are facing this dilemma, how to capture people's attention without leading them astray on the path. It's a very tricky dilemma. To illustrate it, let's just, I will describe how you can interact with an ascended master, but I want to set the stage first. So let's just look at it historically. Ascended masters really became known as a concept in the 1930s through an organization called the I Am Movement. It was started by a man called Godfrey Ray King, or at least, well, that was his writer's name. Guy Ballard was his actual name. So he wrote under Godfrey Ray King, he wrote or published 3 books. And one of them is called Unveiled Mysteries. And in it he describes, among other things, how he was hiking in Mount Shasta in California, and he encountered a mountain lion. And at first he felt afraid, but then he thought, well, no creature of God should harm another creature. And then the mountain lion went away. And he goes around the bend, and there is Saint Germain appearing to him in a physical manifestation. And he says, you just passed an important test, and I want to train you to become a messenger for me. And then, so this is a very, it's described as a physical encounter, you know, very decisive encounter. There are other descriptions in the book of how he's taken into what's called the Cave of Symbols, which is a retreat that Saint Germain has in the state of Wyoming in the United States on something called Table Mountain. He goes into this cave and experiences all kinds of things. He's also at some retreat in Arabia, where he also has a lot of experiences. And to be honest with you, when I first read that book, I felt really sort of apprehensive about it, because I felt that those kind of descriptions were outdated. They didn't appeal to me. But again, as I said, in the 1930s, where were people at in consciousness? What did they need? And first of all, in order to attract them, you had to give them something that seems appealing to people. And many people were in this, I would almost call it magical thinking, where you think that if you fulfill certain requirements, magically the masters are going to appear and do favors for you. And so I'm just saying this was a certain level of the masters, you know. And then after that, they sponsored an organization called the Summit Lighthouse, where they also, the messengers, Mark Prophet and Elizabeth Care Prophet, they also talked about how they had, in the beginning, they had encountered the masters and they had met the masters. And remember, Elizabeth Care Prophet described that at one point she saw El Moya appear to her not as a physical being, but as a visible apparition. And she had the thought, walk through him to prove he's real. And she walked through him, and then she realized she hadn't actually proven anything. But it was still sort of a dramatic, decisive encounter with the masters. And so I've seen many people over the years who have this desire for this dramatic encounter. I remember a number of years ago, I met 2 people who, I will get to the point of the question. I met 2 people who had this dream that the masters were training them for this special mission. And they saw themselves as walking into this stadium with 10,000 people, and they were walking up the central aisle. And as they were walking towards the stage, people were falling over in the spirit. And then they went up on the stage, and people got healed and jumped out of wheelchairs and all this stuff. And in order to meet the masters, they had gone to this, as I said, Unveiled Mysteries book describes this Table Mountain in Wyoming where there's the cave of symbols. So they had gone to Wyoming. And it so happens that there are 10 places in Wyoming called Table Mountain. But these guys had gone to all of them. And they didn't meet Saint Germain. He didn't appear to them. And I've seen other people do similar things. Many people go to Mount Shasta, for example, and think there's some special vibration there. And so all I'm trying to say here is that if you have this kind of magical thinking and you are expecting this kind of dramatic encounter with the Ascended Masters, you are almost guaranteed to be disappointed. I'm not saying that some people haven't had dramatic encounters with the Ascended Masters. I'm just saying the vast majority of people will not have those kind of encounters, and therefore they'll be disappointed. And I've seen people hoping for something to happen, and after a while they suddenly get disappointed. Now they give up on the path. And I think that's a pity, because the path is rewarding. And it does lead you to encounters with the Ascended Masters, just not the way we think with the outer mind. Because what is it that thinks this way? It's the ego. And the ego always wants to be special. Has this need for security. And what more security could there be than you having an Ascended Master appear to you and tell you how special you were? So, again, the ego can use anything, even the concept of Ascended Masters. But there's another consideration that the Masters have actually talked about. The Masters want all of us to encounter them, to experience them. But they want this to happen as a result of us growing on the spiritual path and overcoming a psychology that blocks us from experiencing them, which is the ego, including its desire to be special. So here's a person who finds an Ascended Master teaching, thinks, oh, it'd be wonderful to encounter this elevated master. And the ego thinks, oh, if this master told me I'm special, then I really must be special. And if the master fulfilled that expectation, what would happen? The person would be trapped in that ego for the rest of this lifetime, maybe for several lifetimes. So the masters are again in this dilemma. They want us to experience their presence, but they don't want us to become a blockage to our progress. What's the way out of the dilemma? It is that we change our attitude. We change our approach to the Ascended Masters, to the spiritual path, where we are not looking to feel special for the Masters to make us feel special. We are just looking to encounter the Masters and experience their presence. Right? So back to the question. Can you please make a video explaining an interaction with an Ascended Master? Well, the most common interaction that people get is to get some kind of intuitive direction from inside yourself. Where you suddenly see something or you get an impulse, study this book. And it may come from your higher self, but in many cases it comes from the Ascended Master who is working as your personal teacher. I once knew a man who, in Ascended Master teachings, he said, I was reading something and I got this and I read this concept, and I can't remember what it was, honestly. It was something with the I Am Presence. No, it wasn't. It was something about secret rays. Okay, so he got this concept, secret rays. He read this and he thought, I have to find more about this. And then he heard that across Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is a big city, across Los Angeles was this bookstore that had a book about the secret rays. So he drove all the way across an hour and a half Los Angeles to go to this bookstore. And he couldn't find the book about the secret rays, but he found the book about Ascended Masters. And he bought that book, and as a result he discovered the Ascended Master teachings. So met many other people who have had this similar thing. You get some kind of direction to go and find something. And you follow it, and then you find something else than what you actually thought. So this is one thing, directions. There can also be directions of do something, go somewhere, or don't do something, avoid this. It can be a sense that you should meet a certain person, or you should have a relationship with that person, or that you meet a certain person and you should not have a relationship with that person. It can be all kinds of directions where you don't understand where it's coming from, you don't consciously know where it's coming from, you don't necessarily even understand where it's leading to. But as you follow it, something else opens up. And so for many people in the beginning of the path, you get these inner directions, you take these steps and you do this. Another very common thing is that when you start following the path that the masters outline, and especially invoking spiritual light from the masters, you can experience the presence of a master. And I had that the first time many years ago. I lived in Denmark at the time. My wife and I had created this decree room where we would decree. We had pictures of the masters on the walls, and we had a tape recorder that could play this in the time of cassette tapes, these dictations from Elizabeth Care Prophet. And so I would sometimes sit in there by myself and decree, sometimes for 2 hours, And one time I had done this, invoked light from the masters for a couple of hours, and then I played this cassette tape with a dictation by the Ascended Master Mother Mary. And whoa, I mean, when I was sitting there listening to this, I just felt her presence. It was not something you could describe. It was not she said anything to me. But I just felt her presence. And I felt this unconditional love. I mean, total unconditional love. This was just from listening to a cassette tape. It wasn't a cassette tape, of course. It was the actual presence of Mother Mary. And since then, of course, I've had the same experience many, many times. After giving decrees, for example, listening to a dictation. Now, of course, since I've been trained since 2002 to take dictations, I have it whenever I receive a dictation. But what I'm saying is that the most common interaction is to give the invocations or decrees to invoke light and then listen to a dictation by the masters. Then you can have that sense of the master's presence. Probably strongest if you hear a live dictation, such as, for example, given at a conference, but many people can have it from listening to it as well. And so, to me, that's almost the most valuable interaction with an Ascended Master. Because you just experience that the Masters are so real. I mean, it's more real than your normal experience. It's just so real. And there are many people who are skeptical and doubt that Ascended Masters exist, and they come up with all kinds of arguments for why the Masters don't exist. But you can only argue about it when you haven't experienced it. And, once you have experienced it, you just know how real they are. And therefore you begin to realize that interacting with the Ascended Masters is the way out of this prison of your own mind and the material world. So to me, this is the most valuable, just experiencing the presence. And it's something everybody can have. I know many, many people who've had it. It's by no means exclusive. But it does require you to, as I said, to kind of overcome these expectations you have and just be open. The more neutral and open you can be, the more you're likely to have the experience. Because as I said, if you have an expectation, the Masters cannot validate or seemingly validate that expectation. They can't conform to it. So they must challenge you. And this is another thing that can happen. It's not just that you get a certain direction to do something. It can also be a direction that suddenly comes to you to question a certain illusion. That you have an illusion and this isn't reality. This isn't the way it is. It can also be insights into your own psychology. I mean, after I started working on my own psychology back in the early 1990s, I was constantly asking the Masters for help to see something. And quite frankly, I don't think I've ever asked the Masters to help me see something in my psychology and I haven't received an answer. But sometimes it takes time before I am ready to see the answer. It's almost like I have to work with the issue for a certain time. I have to look at it from different angles, look at myself, look at my reactions, and then suddenly I have clarity to help me see it. So this, of course, also is extremely valuable on the spiritual path. Because, as I've said in many of my videos, it is the unresolved psychology that keeps us trapped at a certain level of consciousness and prevents us from rising. So you know, I know there can be, people have all kinds of dreams and expectations, but really, you know, the three most valuable interactions with an ascended master is get directions on what to do on the path, experience the master's presence, the unconditional love, and how real it is, the reality of ascended masters, and then get help with resolving your psychology. And really, if you get to a point where you have that, what more do you want? I mean, what more do you need? You know, we are, it's like, I met people, okay. Many people, of course, will look at this claim that I'm a messenger for the ascended masters. Oh, that's not valid. Oh, he's just crazy, or whatever. But there are people who accept it as valid. And I have met people who accept me as a messenger, and they think I must have some very special relationship with the ascended masters. But my relationship with the ascended masters is those three things that I just talked about. Get directions, I get a sense of their presence, and I get help in my psychology. Then, of course, I take dictations from the masters, and that gives me a special experience, yes. And it is a special experience, it's not that. But it's just that it's not like it's some outer world experience where the masters suddenly appear to me and all these magical things happen. You know, I'm perfectly content with the masters giving me these directions, and I'm serving the masters as best I can. And that's why I'm saying, you know, having these expectations of something special, something out of this world interaction, it can block you from experiencing the ascended masters. It can also, for some people, it opens them up to false masters, who are imposters, who are simply appearing to people, talking to people, in order to trap them in a codependent relationship where you give the energy to these beings. The ascended masters never take energy from you. I don't need you to give energy to them. They are one with the unlimited supply of spirit, so why would they need anything from us here on earth? I have never ever felt that the ascended master took any energy from me. But I know many people who have been in contact with beings, and they are probably in the emotional realm or the mental realm or the low identity realm, and they feel they're drained of energy after an interaction. So that's a very good measure to have. If you are interacting with any kind of beings and you feel drained of energy, that is a warning sign. The ascended masters, they don't want to take anything from you, they only want to give to you. And I've never experienced them doing anything else. It's a flow that comes from them. They don't need anything to go the other way.